Welcome to our monthly Education Technology Leaders Webcast. I'm David Couch with the Kentucky Department of Education. Thanks for joining us this morning. We're at the new Hart County High School. I got to see this maybe a month and a half, 2 months ago before you'd come across the finish line, but it's nice to see the place that it's at here today. But once again, thanks for joining us. This is our way to reach out to school districts once a month and highlight a host school district, which we're going to enjoy doing today. I have with me Marty Park, Mike Lettingham, Phil Coleman, and behind the scenes is Bruce Lindsay, who may come up in and out or ask questions from behind the camera. So that's the KDE team, but thanks for joining us. We also have Go Soapbox up and available. And so for those that are maybe new to this is our way to get your feedback throughout the webcast. We'll have someone monitoring it, and the questions that bubble to the top we'll address, but also we've asked you to respond to 6 questions, and we'll show the results of those live on the webcast, and we've asked you to respond to a discussion question. So take a look at those now if you already haven't done so. I sent those to you probably about 20 minutes ago for you to see in advance, and so hopefully you've had a chance to review those, and you can either respond to those now or respond to those throughout the webcast, and even, to be honest with you, after the webcast. But I'd appreciate for you to do that, do it live. So we're here at Hart County. I'm going to turn this over to Superintendent Nathan Smith, who used to be a CIO here for a period of time. Played a bunch of different roles here. For a short period of time, yes. He played a bunch of different roles here. So I'll let you introduce the district and also the members of the Hart County team.
Okay. Well, David, first of all, thank you and KDE for picking Hart County. It's a pleasure to have you here today for us to highlight our new building. In Hart County, we have 2,300 students, and it is truly a family. We are student-oriented. Students always come first in the decisions we've made. Been a superintendent for 7 months, and it's an outstanding job, and the people of Hart County has treated me so good and stood behind my initiatives and the things I believe can improve the students of Hart County. I would like to introduce my team / family. First, I have Shane Butler, Network Administrator, Representative Bart Rowland, Senator Steve Meredith, Director of Instruction and Supervisor of Instruction and District DAC, Angela Frank, and Assistant Superintendent Debbie Fowler. And one thing we've been lucky enough to receive a couple of state grants this year that we feel are really going to push student achievement to the next level. And at this point, I would like Ms. Fowler to highlight those couple of grants.
Thank you. We, in the spring, applied for what's called the Striving Readers Comprehensive Literacy Grant, excuse me, and also the C3WP through the National Writing Project grant. We were fortunate enough to be blessed with both those. And so each of our schools has a contingency being trained in these grants. The Striving Readers is a program that enhances literacy skills, incorporating it with technology. And the C3WP is a college and career ready type program that prepares our teachers to teach what college writing should be from grades 6 through 12. They have 45 hours of intense professional development around that, and it incorporates technology too. So we're very pleased to be working with these grants.
Thanks. I'd like to give a chance for our legislative representatives here. I know Senator Meredith and Representative Rowland are also part of the IT subcommittee, but this is you're not part of it?
I don't know.
Oh, okay. I just put you on it, I think.
Okay. I maybe don't know that.
Well, I really appreciate this because this is a great opportunity for us. It's rare when we do these webcasts that we have both the Senate representative and the state representative with us. So we appreciate both of you showing up today and to give us your perspective of K-12 education technology, your view of it. So I'll turn it over to you.
How could we not be here? This is such an exciting time for the state of Kentucky. You know, with the job creations we've seen during the last 3 years, it's truly phenomenal. The future's never looked brighter for Kentucky, but it's sort of like me and Rip Van Winkle. We've been asleep for a lot of years and now we're rushing to catch up. But what I'm really thrilled about is we're not intimidated by that. I'm talking about we being legislators, being educators, anyone within the state understands that Kentucky can be competitive. We will be competitive, but it's going to take a Herculean effort to do that. It's not a marathon we're trying to do right now. We're trying to sprint to catch up. And I think we're going to do it. Obviously, a lot of challenges come with that, but I don't see anybody intimidated by those challenges. We want to embrace it. That's certainly why we're here today, to see how we can contribute to this process, but we all need to work together and make investments we need in education, and certainly information technology drives it so much. And I'm just boggled to think how far technology has come during my lifetime, but we've seen nothing yet. And we know that in the future, 50% of the jobs that are going to be created are going to be internet-based. So this works hand in hand with this. You know, we're going to have an internet-based economy, and information technology, it's the very foundation of that. So possible we can learn today how we can be of assistance in this whole process, but very excited to be here and to hear the dialogue today and to be educated as part of this entire process. So we appreciate the invitation.
Thank you.
Yeah. Absolutely, and thank you, Mr. Cowles, for having us here, and Superintendent Smith and your team. Excited to be in your building. This is the first time that I've seen one of these tech webinars, let alone participated in one, so very interested to see what you're talking about throughout the districts. Yeah, yeah, and so interested to see what's going on. I couldn't agree more with what the Senator said, and I really want to take the opportunity to say congratulations on the new facility here. I was proud to be in the General Assembly 4 years ago, and have the opportunity to vote on a budget that kind of got this high school and your vocational school kick-started, and you guys have really done a fantastic job with it, and we're looking forward to taking a tour when this is over with.
Shannon, we're going to talk about education technology throughout, and you play a lot of different roles here throughout the years, and you actually played tour guide for me here probably 6 weeks ago as we took a look at the facility, what it was. It's nice to see it across the finish line. But what kind of introductory things you like to say? Because we'll be talking about your district throughout the webcast, just to our audience.
We have a lot of big changes here, and the biggest changes in technology here are the implementation of the new panels that we put in. We are a one-to-one Chromebook district, which I'm sure we'll discuss later. And going from a one-to-one Windows setting to a one-to-one Chromebooks has been it's been a big change, and then moving over to Gmail as well. So.
Just and I know folks kind of saw a little bit of this on the video, but when I was here a while back, you took me through the schools that were here before. The way you've incorporated them in this new high school, I think, is fantastic. You know, I grew up in Johnson County, and I know when we built our new high school there, we kind of lost what Oil Springs, Flat Gap, and Meade were. And I loved how you did that, and also just the ways you've taken advantage of every space in the floors to highlight certain things. I think it's FBLA and some of the other things that you do here. Just very clever and very engaging environment. And so I know the students are excited. I saw where they were at. So they got to be really happy about being in here now, right?
Yes. Yes.
So
it was very nice the first day, seeing their faces as they walked into the building. It was magical.
It was.
Yeah. So
It took a lot of hours and a lot of work, and we had a lot of help along the way too.
Yes.
We actually had help from other districts in Region 2 came in and helped us today. I mean, they gave us a day of their fall break to come and help us get things set up, so we're very appreciative.
And going back to the floor, the designs of the floor, the high schools, the prior high schools that came together in '68 to form Hart County High School. Tradition is rich in Hart County. We still have those buildings functional today as P8 centers. We had an open house, and we had folks coming in, and they would stand in their box and say, you know, I was here in '68 or I was here in '67 during that transition. So it was, tradition's nice.
Right. So the last time I was here, I was also with the School Facility Construction Commission. And one of the things on their agenda was approving the unmet need for education technology for the following school year. And so some of the things I talked about in there that you got to be part of, and Shane was said, yes, that, you know, Kentucky overall is the pioneer and national leader in education technology. And I know most folks don't know that, not that we can't improve, but the areas that we identified to try to improve on is on the people side of education technology. And I've been traveling the state to different cooperatives. I just met with all the CASBO, all the folks that are kind of in the financial management part of districts to educate them on this and the different groups, and it's well received, and it's the path that we have going on is, and Marty's going to show, the amount of technology being bought is tremendous, and the things we're doing with it is tremendous, but the most alarming thing to me is the people side of it, is we're not keeping up with that. And so I know that's going to impact our ability to maximize that investment in the classroom and keep it reliable and keep it secure. And so we're going to talk about parts of those and reinforce that, what you heard as a superintendent, which I think is a key part of it. So Marty, I'll turn it over to you, and I want to show folks that we don't have the final results in,
right,
but I want to show the data you just turned into some of the key things that we found out.
Absolutely, and thank you so much. I really love Superintendent Smith, and we think about designing learning spaces in new ways, and I know you've put a lot of care into this facility and thinking about how your students
I would like to highlight my predecessor, Ricky Line.
Yeah.
Ricky did most of the planning up front, and he did an outstanding job. I can't take the credit for that part. That was Superintendent Line did most of the planning.
Absolutely, and that's part of learning and thinking of new ways to integrate digital tools and resources in our learning spaces, and really focusing on our student experience. And I think that's been mentioned a bit, and you all have the idea of having courage to tackle new challenges and transition to new ideas. You all have really been a model for that. And I was mentioning before we started the show that it's going to be fun to highlight that and continue work. Andy, I've got some slides. If we can jump over to the laptop and show those. I'm just going to, and if we could bounce back and forth, that'd be great. So obviously this is a point in the year when we start to collect and start to really think about our digital footprint across the state of Kentucky. And as David mentioned, we are really a national leader in this space where we really work hand in hand in partnership with our school districts. To think about what our next steps are and what our students have access to. We've transitioned fully from just looking at and counting technology, counting devices, and we've transitioned fully to how our students are using the technology for effective learning. That's really where we have transitioned to. So just a quick shout out, our digital readiness tool, which most folks are familiar with, this year's capture is starting to be published. I want to highlight the trends section of the digital readiness tool and really focus on district by district, or in this case, I'm showing our top 10 statewide trends. This data is populated, and we're starting to really get an idea about where our state is going, where Kentucky is going. Are you okay? Okay. So this is the digital readiness tool that's available and out there. The district by district snapshot will be available. Again, we like to show this once a year just to look at and really push folks to start to use that comparative analysis tool, whether it's from year to year inside your district or to do a comparative analysis with districts that are about your same size and about your same makeup. So David's asked just a couple quick captures of where we are so far this year in terms of digital readiness. One of the things that is really starting to ring true for us, and again, 100% of our schools are connected with high-speed, highly available fiber, which is awesome, and our schools are really starting to celebrate that and champion that with our students. And so we see our student-to-computer ratio continue to improve. So for the first time ever, we have right at one device for every student in the state. Now, what we like to make sure we're aware of is that not all of our students have a device in their hand, right? So we have labs in many spaces. We do see this continued transition to where we assign devices to students, and I know Hart County, you all have led in that space for quite some time with a transition from Windows devices you mentioned to Chromebooks. And so we want to talk a little bit more about that transition as we move forward today as well. Our student-to-computer ratio continues to improve. Again, this is an awesome opportunity for us. From really looking at traditional devices, these are devices that traditionally are chained to a specific spot in schools. We're seeing a continued transition to now, for the first time ever, more mobile devices, mobile technologies, which, you know, really gets to that learning space design and making sure that students have access to carry devices with them where they need them, whether that's throughout the school building, throughout learning spaces or home. Looking at elementary versus secondary, this has stayed pretty true, pretty consistent for us, and that's something that we watch strategically to understand. We do have more one-to-one initiatives at the secondary level, obviously. Right now, across the state, a trend that we're seeing is 4th grade and above. I think you all have assigned devices to what grades and below?
We're pretty much one-to-one Chromebooks third grade up.
Awesome. Yeah. So again, kind of leading in that trend space for us in Hart County, which is awesome. A big area for us that we really watch closely because it really helps us in decision making. And again, we love to not just collect data, but use it strategically. So for us, looking at trend, Chrome and Chromebook as a device footprint is now 42% of our total statewide footprint. That is up, and again, 13 additional percentage from the year before, which is interesting for us to continue to understand that and watch that and help design technologies around that. Will continue to be important. Windows devices are down 9%, down to 39% of our total device footprint, and then iOS and Mac are down a little bit as well. Okay, so this is a trend that we'll continue to understand and watch. Really getting, again, I keep saying what students are doing with devices and with the technologies that they have access to.
So can we ask, you all made a change compared to when you started this, because I remember Hart County being one of the very first to go to one-to-one, and there's probably 2 changes in how to maximize that investment this time around, but also the change from probably that first time out with, I don't know if those were Windows or Mac devices during that time. Were they Windows? To the Chrome. So tell me about what your thought process in that transition, because you saw what's happening with the Chromes across the state. So tell me about what led to that, and it could be any one of you talking about it.
Well, the biggest thing is expense, and when you can purchase 2 or 3 Chrome devices for one Windows-based device, then it makes it much easier to put the technology in the student's hands. Right. And that was a driving factor. And then once we transitioned to Google, and a lot of our teachers moved to Google Classroom, then everything just fell in place and everything flows much better.
Yeah. And ease of use.
We were Windows device for 8 years. We had 2 cycles of Windows computers, and then last year we wrote full Chromebooks.
We've tried to be proactive in our funding budgets also. This year, when we looked at our Title IV budget, we decided to recruit, I guess, for lack of a better word, 2 teachers in each of our buildings to become Google certified. And then those teachers who are in the process of being trained now will train other teachers, so it'll be contagious. And Ms. Frank actually began that push toward Google Classroom, showing all of us, that we could do it, so I'll let her speak to that.
We basically started using Google Classroom for our non-traditional instructional days, and that's been very effective and very helpful to keep all our data together as far as teachers and students as well. But I'll also speak to, as DAC, when we did the online assessments last spring, it was so easy. So stress-free, and that's unusual coming from a DAC, but it was, we had no technical issues, and that's a plus.
I think we had, I'm trying to get this number right, we had 130,000 students last spring take an online test. And I don't know if our state folks, legislators will be aware of this, is we had tremendous success. But if you look at the states to our south, not to mention any state name, and others around us, they did not have the same level of success. In fact, they were on the probably other part of that. And, part of that is our statewide approach to where we have product standardization, the network being in place, the products that we have. But also the nice trend I've seen is typically the online testers were stuck in a world of a desktop computer. And now they recognize they better get on board with mobile devices and a wider variety of them. So the real thing for me for that test was they recognized it was successful with much more than your traditional desktop computer. So I'm glad it went well, and it went well statewide. It was the largest. I suspect it's going to get even larger that we do it. And the part of that online testing, the reason it's great is, the immediate feedback that the teacher gets along with the students. So you're changing your practice, especially with our summative tests. You get those results back in the summer. You can change your teaching practice for the following year. You get them back in October. Well, that time's gone. And it's also for the more the formative interim tests. Now, you talked about some of the testing. You use those for kind of formative interim tests too?
Absolutely.
Like the map and pass, as I'm talking about in just the online classroom? Yeah.
We have rapid assessments that our students take periodically, and they're able to use those online, so that's a plus.
So I don't know if this was district used clickers, because we had clickers at one time, and that was the way to get the immediate feedback, but there was a cost to that, and they were so obviously if a student's carrying around a device, they're carrying around a device, they can take the test immediately, and it's not specialized, correct?
Right.
And
We were able to, we were able to purchase Rapid through our Circle grant, our Striving Readers grant. So that was one way to implement the technology there. And we give that as our universal screener in reading 3 times a year. But it's there for teachers to assess whenever they so choose formatively.
Has this evolution in the transition to Chrome, was that by accident, by design? I mean, was it a conversation within the teaching profession that says, hey, this school's doing this, we're moving there, and is this going to become the platform for our state?
Well, I can, Senator Meredith, I can speak to some of that, I think. And, when we watch trends develop in our school districts, one of the things that we really push on is making sure that all of the technologies that are available, David mentioned online assessment, for example. So immediately when Chromebooks became available to our schools to start to implement, our assessment vendors were not really operational with those devices. And so we started working and pushing more towards the devices that we have access to. And so when we see trends start to develop, one thing about Kentucky that's awesome, and David mentions that we lead the nation in a lot of areas, but we scale really fast and we learn from each other really fast. And so I think that's really an implication of the trending that we're seeing. The other thing that I will say with all of our partners that we work strategically with, and this was a conversation this morning before the show started, is, and it's already been mentioned twice, the ease of use to get and to get to adoption. And so, for example, I think we mentioned just the rollout of Chromebooks. Not only are they cheaper devices, but how's that rollout been from an overall management perspective?
Once you have G Suite set up and everything is syncing with your Active Directory, setting up a Chromebook takes a few minutes, very few minutes, and we have it set up now where it's pretty much automated. I can plug in a small device and it'll go through and set it up on our domain, put it in our G Suite, and it's ready to go. And
I think the other key part to address one of your questions is, I would not say the Google side was state-led. We mainly listened to our customers, and they were telling us this is a direction they wanted to go. So I think one of the ways that we've remained relevant over 25 years is not saying we at the state level have all the answers, but listening to the field and the heartbeat of what they're doing and what they need. And we heard quite some time back, several years ago, about the Chromebook, and so we added that as a standard. We could have stayed hardcore and said it's not this one and eliminated, but that would have been in touch with our customers. And then we saw the movement toward the Google Suite, which is, I call it a Google tsunami that's happening across the state. That started from the classroom, not something that we did. And also to adapt to that, we had at one time the standard of Microsoft Mail was the only thing all schools could use. But based upon our customer feedback, they said they wanted another option to go along with that. There was a good number that were happy with that. But they wanted to also have Google, Gmail as an option. Now, we could have once again said hardcore and this way we're going to do it, but we changed. And I think this is a Gmail district now. You made the transition, right? We had about a third of our districts do that. So part of it is, I think the good thing, and I would say this across country, not we have it perfect, but I would say Kentucky, the relationship between the DOE and the EdTech folks is the best in the nation. Not that there's not room for improvement and criticism. It's because we listen. And like I said, we have a summit once a year that Marty's going to be talking about one of the items that we listen, and then we show response. The Google part is one of the items we had as a topic. And it was overwhelming. Folks said they wanted this. And so I think part of it is being successful is you do have a statewide vision, but you're willing to listen to your customer and adapt. And I think that's a part of this success story. And obviously this district's one of them.
What's fascinating about this is a lot of decisions we make are price driven. And certainly this was a big influence for you folks, but when you look at price, you also give up quality sometimes, but that wasn't the case here. So
No, not at all.
again, was that by accident or design or just divine intervention? But it truly is fascinating that you got price, but you also got quality, which is a unique situation to be in. And it looks like just within the profession itself, it's driving our state to Chromebooks.
And it has impact on the other vendors too, right? Because they go, oh man, we're getting our butt kicked in this category, we better adapt. So we like that competition too between them. I think it makes adjustments too. I think that probably the unknown part of the Chromebooks, could they last as long? So the part is, yes, they cost less, but can they have the total cost more? Can they last 5 or 6 years or 10 years like some of these other devices? And I know if we're all the way through that to see that, but I've had a Chromebook, one of the original ones, and it's still doing fairly well. And I suspect they'll last for quite some time. Marty, would add.
Well, I think that's just such a great question and really deep thinking but when we think about learning and there's not one device that's probably the right thing for all kids, right? And so really looking at what students are going to be able to do, and are they going to be creating videos using that device as a musical instrument, and so figuring out what is the right thing for them. And I think also in Kentucky we've developed such awesome partnerships. So for example, our Microsoft partners, our Apple partners, our Google partners, our Amazon partners are all working together. In a sense, there's competition, right, which is great for us and our school districts, obviously. But those partnerships to work together, I think, is
that's a good one with even Microsoft and Google, huge competitors. But Kentucky became the first state to have a connection between what we call our Active Directory system and the Google system. So you could actually, and this is why the other part that works for the Microsoft side, is we made it so no matter what it is you're using, you can log on to them. And there is that. I agree, that's a good part. They're competitors, but we've worked to say there's a part of this that we need to be a teammate to. And that's another cool thing we've been able to pull off here.
And in this building, for example, we offer Microsoft MOS certification as one of the certs students can receive, but we also are certifying in Google.
Yeah.
So
and it's staying on top of all of them. We don't say exclusive one. I think they're all have a place. But we like the competitive aspect of it. And you're right, the price came in. It for sure did. Came into it and didn't have to suffer with quality too much. Yeah.
So Andy, if we can jump back to the screen here real quick. And, just again, looking at overall footprint is important to us. Again, our job from a technology perspective is to make sure that the technology is in the background and our students can really get to integrating into the learning space. That's our job, to make sure that we're doing that.
But that's a historic thing to go back to it. It's the first time since the beginning of the Kentucky Education Technology System in the early 90s. Windows has always been in the lead, so this is the first time in all these years, 26 years, we have a new leader and an operating system. Lots of numbers. You can see we have 200, close to 300,000 Windows devices, and we have a wide variety of things there, 752, but you can see the changing landscape. And so we have to make sure, we've always liked multi-platform. So everything we have usually operates on all those, but we let really the students and the teachers and also the adults and those pick which direction they want to go. And this is where they're going. When
you say you want to be multi-platform, is that why, to give folks a choice?
Yes, it is. It was very intentional. And from the beginning of KETS, it was always multi-platform, so we didn't box ourselves into just one.
So if I love Apple as a student, I'm not tied in.
That's right.
Well, you got to do Google.
That's right.
That's right.
That's right.
That's right.
That was a strategic decision.
So let me make a quick comment here, and I'm going to speak to the technology activity report data a little bit more here in just a second as a follow-up as part of this conversation. But speaking about that specific area and that item, buying instructional devices, our overall spend, when we look at it as a state, is remained steady of what our dollar spend is toward devices, but yet we're increasing the number of devices. So, I mean, that's just to speak to the dollar value that we're able to recognize there. We're not having to spend a lot more money to get more devices.
To see that ratio drop, or to improve it, rather. Yep. One of the other things that we like to look at, and this is a great conversation with Hart County, is really looking at the number of devices purchased versus surplus. We've seen a few districts where we've worked with where we've really worked on what that surplusing looks like, because holding on to older equipment sometimes isn't always the best thing, especially from a support perspective. So what does that look like in Hart County for you all?
Well, of course, on our reports we do, that's all going to change because we're in a new building now. So we've got a lot of surplus that's going to come off.
That's right.
That came from our old building. But we do have a lot of elementary schools that have done an immaculate job of patching and piecemealing and making things work. And with our push with Chrome devices, we've been able to eliminate some of those and take care of some of their issues. And there's still some places where we have to use a Windows-based device.
Yep.
And it just has to be. And we recognize that, and we want to make sure that.
And I think the important point we talk about the support part, what he's talking about is the number of people it takes to respond. The older the device, typically the more people you have to try to keep it up and going.
Absolutely.
And trying to save it. So obviously this is strategic. If you're not addressing the people side, then definitely you got to do a faster refresh of them, because you're not to make it as reliable. Mike, I think this is a good spot for you to talk about
E-Scrap. I was just looking to remember who it was awarded to, but we did just have a new contract awarded, E-Scrap contract, to be able to get rid of old equipment, a vehicle by which to do that. We've had contracts in the past, and there was issues that came about and so forth, but we do have a new contract that was awarded, and I believe the KEs have the information to distribute on that. If not, we'll make sure they do. And I was looking, I know I've got here in my notes who it was awarded to, and I can't remember the name, but I'll mention that here in a minute. But I think it's important for all the districts to be aware of, is that we do have that.
Because we've been out without it, I don't know how long.
We've been out with it for a good while.
Yeah.
Because there was issues. It's kind of one of those deals where we ran into, and I say we collectively, Finance Cabinet along with us, because they actually issued this contract, ran into multiple issues in getting the contract awarded. So, yeah.
That's a great thing.
And the good part about it, just from a cybersecurity, is they do the cleaning of it. I think it's the DoD standards, Department of Defense standards, and some other ones that they clean it so when it's turned in, there's no way someone could get something off of it and do something destructive with it. Yeah.
So are the districts having to pay for those devices going out the door, or are they purchased by the E-Scrap contractor?
What was the question there?
So it's a great question on whether districts have to pay to surplus devices, or as a part of the contract, it's actually the opposite in many cases.
Do the districts get money by turning it in?
No, they don't get money for turning them in. I mean, it's a service that you pay for.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they're paying so much. They're paying so much per device to have it cleaned and then gotten rid of.
And then these folks actually come to the district location and pick it up, so it's not something you have to ship. I think it even can go down to the school. Right. I think most districts have a location in the district you come, but right. I'm understanding they will even go to the school level and pick it up if you want.
And again, I'll look here because I know I got some notes on it, and it's just awarded contract, so we'll be sure and get more information out to the districts on it and more details. Yeah.
Next up, from a digital readiness and really just a snapshot perspective, and David's mentioned the people side of our work, which is the most valuable aspect of what we do. It's the people to integrate. We do have a jump for the first time in many years, several years.
A bump or a jump? I would say a slight bump.
Bump?
Yes.
Bump is probably.
I don't know if I would call it what I would call a jump.
It definitely looks like
a better better trend. Yeah.
Not a 9-2 jump, it's more of a bump. But in doing so, we do have an increase in digital learning coaches across the state, slight increase in our technical leaders, our technicians across the state. We do have this year more student technology leadership, STLP, student help desk, which are part of not just students learning how to work on computers as a future employment skill for them, but also learn how to work with people and try to figure out what problems adults are having to try to help, right? So we have, do you all have a student technology leadership help desk? Yeah.
We do.
Awesome.
We have a gentleman by the name of D.L. Talley who administers that for us, and he has students, different students at any given period through the day. Ms. Tracy Sims is in the room. She's also a technology leader in this building. She's assistant principal at Hart County High School. So together they work with those students, and it's a wonderful service with the number of Chromebooks we have in the building. Mr. Butler is over here very often, but the assistance is needed as large as we have with the student population.
It's such a valuable...
And it's a win-win. Obviously, the students are learning life skills. Not all of them will probably need to go into the technology profession, but they're learning what it's like, and they're also kind of a supplemental part. They have to have adult supervision. I definitely had to at 17 and 18, still do in a lot of different ways, but definitely they do. I find most students, and they take that role very seriously. Folks say, well, they'll abuse this. I'm not saying it's not happened 0 time, but I don't hear that much of it. They understand it only takes one student to abuse it, and it ruins it for everyone else. And helping, but I think they generally like to do that. And it is a part of the toolbox of this people side of this. We're seeing all the items bought, of trying to balance this out a little bit.
Speaking of balance, do you have any historical data as to how much school districts are spending on information technology? Is that increasing, decreasing, staying the same? Are we seeing a shifting of resources from the hardware to the people side and vice versa? Is that what maybe is partly attributed to this?
We are seeing, I would say, and Mike, you've seen it, is the trend is, and there's a good chart I have to show this over the past 5 or 6 years, that it goes like this, and this past year has kind of gone like this, buying the stuff. And this is anything technology-wise, and the technology-wise stuff is increased because now the phone systems is an core part of touches the internet, security systems, heating and air conditioning systems, and that's why I say a bump. So when I see this chart, I just saw our spending patterns went like this. And our people side is not going this anymore, but it went like this. And so our gap is increasing. And so we are having some success is in educating the superintendents different groups. Please address this, or otherwise we'll start having reliability issues. And so, having the students part of the help desk, that's part of our toolbox that we've created a tool that you should do. And also we've taken a look at, I know we're right here in the library, but expanding the role of librarians, having them play more of a role of digital learning coach versus traditional librarian. We're seeing the shift in certain school districts moving to that. So you're taking advantage of an existing resource but repurposing it. But definitely when buying a new, major investment in one-to-one, and you've had it here for a while, but we've had districts that moved to it, we are seeing the trend of superintendents, chief financial officers now starting to say, well, do I need to add one more technician to keep it up and reliable? Do I need to maybe have a digital learning coach somewhere in the mix and make sure it's maximized? So we are seeing it. As you're seeing the past, we've seen, we've stopped doing this and are now doing this. I would like to see it go up like this, but a little bit is better than none.
We've had to make some tough decisions in that realm. When we first integrated technology several years ago, full force, we had what was called a CIT in each building, Curriculum Informational Technology Coach. That was paid through our Title I funds. It was a supplemental position, and it was wonderful because those people held everyone accountable, was there to help students and teachers. But our Title I funding has been cut in the last few years. So we had to make some tough decisions, and we don't have as many of those now. But I think they were instrumental at first, and they've transitioned us into being able to handle it, for lack of a better word. We did this year through our Circle grant, however, hire one of those individuals as our district literacy coach. And so it's really nice that she was also a reading teacher, so she can combine the technology and the reading together. So it's really a nice fit. But we have those CITs still in the buildings, they're in classrooms, and they're available to help when needed. They're just not hired as that position.
Is it fair to say the primary funding source for this initiative, if we can call it that, is repurposing dollars? Is that what you're seeing statewide? And if we are we realizing any what I would call economies? We had discussion earlier about textbooks.
Right.
You know, are we going to need them in the future?
Right.
So dollars assigned to that now go over here. So
we are seeing that. I think one of the things, and we'll talk about in our December webcast, the OEA study, is they have seen a shift of buying. Now, there's certain level of schools that didn't get the textbook funds, but there's certain parts that did, and they're repurposing those. I do see the repurposing. They're moving more to the digital side and looking at these as content delivery devices that bring the content and keep it up to date. So we are seeing that change and that shift. Absolutely. One thing, if I say about the people side, if nothing else I get at traveling the state, is showing some love for people in Shane's position. Is if you can't do something, realize the inordinate amount of hours they are putting in. And I know even in this building, the amount of hours you're putting in is crazy. And most people don't realize the amount of hours that our technical staff are doing to produce just magical things in school districts. And so if anything else, you know, give them a hug and say thank you, versus beating them down and said it's not fast enough, it's not reliable enough, knowing they probably don't have anywhere near what they should have. And there's a tendency for technical folks, they don't fuss much, and so you don't know that they're being overwhelmed.
And in this, David, it's changed so quickly.
Yeah.
We have brought on a new computer technician in Hart County in the past, 6 months, Caleb? Yeah. And knowing that if we had to go back and take him away, I don't think Shane can function and do his job. So, but, you know, in the last half a year, how much it has multiplied. Right. It's
I think still Shane needs a high five.
He gets them quite often. Not enough, maybe, but he gets them quite often. He's outstanding.
You know, that's so valuable to the decisions that you've made, and I think it's, you know, when you think about repurposing and making strong decisions, the other thing that we see quite a bit, and it's really important to dig into and understand, is as things become easier to use, we talked about ease of use, and adoption increases, and people need more help. If folks didn't use the stuff, then maybe not as much help is needed, right? And so seeing that.
It's like David said, you know, it's not just the traditional technology, computers. It's the phones, the network, the phones, and security. We've added 70 new cameras to this building, and more cameras are coming to our elementary school. So somebody has to monitor those and make sure they are up and running. The beast is growing.
Well, I offer this with a little bit of trepidation, because I'm not suggesting adding any more to teachers and what we do, but the way this is evolving, it's part of the training to become a teacher. Going to have to be more focused on information technology in some of the very basic things that probably Shane is doing now that teachers might be expected to do in the future.
I'll just plug Lindsay Wilson College. My daughter is an elementary ed student, and she will be Google certified by the end of the semester. That's her EdTech class, so that's promising.
I think the change, and you know, one of our goals that we, to be honest with you, haven't been in this for all these years. I wish we'd have done better. And my daughter's a teacher in Christian County. My two son-in-laws, my son's getting ready to do is, with our students coming out of our College of Education, our teachers, they're still not at the place they need to be to where they're ready to go inside a K-12 classroom and show how to maximize that investment. And a lot of it, we're doing remedial training once they get here. And I know they would fuss about us giving them students they got a remedial, but in this case it is remedial. And so that's an area that we got to get them much more in tune with. But because in most universities, they don't see that good practice, they don't see, it's not practiced. And so when they go to these classrooms, it's the most high tech, you know, that in most K-12 United States are not yet prepared for it. So we got to get them better. It would take, I still think there's a need for a digital learning coach on how to maximize it, but they don't have to spend so much time on basics. They could do more advanced things. The break, fix, repair, I don't think we need teachers doing that. It should be much more reliable. It shouldn't take that. And you're definitely seeing it less, but definitely how to maximize these investments. They should have a better run and go. and hopefully we can address that part. But digital learning coaches help do that, and that's the best thing I think we put in place.
In the informational technology vein, I would like to thank our legislators who are present, because we are currently constructing what's called Green River College and Career Academy.
Oh, yes.
Many in our community have worked for quite some time to make this happen. I think the day we went to Frankfurt, there were 25 or 30 community members just begging for this. But in that, we have an informational technology pathway where we will be training students to enter that field, and they will actually be able to receive dual credit while they're in our building.
Awesome.
So we're very excited about that.
That's awesome. That is awesome. And just wrapping up, some of the digital readiness, quick snapshot from this year. When thinking about the people side of K-12 EdTech, we do see an increase in the number of CIO contract days. So David just mentioned this, that our districts are seeing the need to up contract days for our EdTech leaders, which we look at that and we watch that. We did see a flat line this year in the people side of somebody at the district level having that overall data quality lens. That stayed pretty flat for the last couple of years. We'll have to really start to push on that a bit more. Now, all that being said, we also may have, and we're still looking at the initial information, but we may have more of our EdTech leaders committed to job duties outside of technology. So while contract days have increased, I know we have a few EdTech leaders who are also finance officers now and have taken on additional responsibilities. So we're looking at that pretty closely to see if there's really been an offset there.
And typically, your smaller districts, you're going to see multiple responsibilities. It's just, and when they take on so many, they can't focus on this one part. And like I say, in the corporate sector, when you have a CIO, they're a CIO. It doesn't matter if they're small or big. So the more they take on additional responsibilities, the less they're able to focus in on this.
And again, just a visual on the continued trend line, even though we've had a bump in people that are focused on technologies, we're continuing to outpace that. And so our trend line continues to go up.
And up is not good, correct?
That's correct. In this specific visual, up means, more technologies tagged onto,
So the first one is one person for every 600, now it's one person for every 1,400.
Yeah, above 1,400 at this point. Yep. Last year we were right at just above 1,200. And so thinking about the hundreds of additional devices and technologies that individuals are responsible for.
In the corporate sector, it's significantly lower than 600.
Yep.
So just to kind of give you a balance.
We also see an increase in more districts reporting purposeful implementations of digital citizenship. So this is where teaching our students, how to develop digital superpowers, but at the same time also understand responsible use and respectful use of the technologies they have access to. We still have 7 districts that we want to work closer with so that we can get to a more purposeful implementation of digital citizenship. And again, that we don't view this as a compliance thing, it's more of a growth thing for us. We feel like, we believe that the more students who have those skills, appropriate and responsible skills, the more technology integration that occurs. We see that correlation. So Andy, that's just a quick snapshot of some of the hot items. We'll definitely do more. This is December and January. January we'll have our infographic published and that we integrate into our KETS master plan as well.
Thanks.
Can we jump over to Go Soapbox and see?
Yes.
Some just to check and see if we have any social questions. And I know that we have teams that are responding back to questions that come in. Yep, absolutely. We will share these trend slides out, and those will be integrated. There's a question about that. Okay. You want to jump on?
Yeah. Well, Mike, I'll let you don't talk about that.
Yeah, and I'm just going to dovetail really, and I'm not going to speak to any real specifics around the technology activity report data. More so, I'm going to speak to the method, to the madness of how we put information together to be able to speak to things such as what Marty was speaking to. Marty was speaking pretty much from, I want to say, raw information, new information that we got from the Digital Readiness Survey. We obviously look at that information. We look at the technology activity reports, which is the dollars that are associated to what we're doing. It comes out of the Munis financial system, and we do have that collected now. We have that aggregated for the state, and we're really in the middle of looking at that and seeing what those numbers are telling us. And so we look at those things in coordination with the kind of information Marty was just showing you. And then also in conjunction, we look at the information we get from our vendor contracts. You know, we get reports from our vendor partners that hold contracts, and you know, obviously the things that are purchased from them give us indicators of how the dollars are being spent and on what different, you know, what the trends are and so forth. I will speak to a couple of things that you kind of support what Marty was pointing out. We see really a consistent dollar amount being spent toward instructional devices. But as I mentioned earlier, but we know we're getting more bang for the buck. We know we're quantity-wise, we know we're increasing that, but from a dollar perspective, we're really not having to spend more money. Printing definitely has doubled, but we know that part of that is because of some of the clarifications we made about the kind of information we need to be capturing regarding printing. Personnel cost it has increased, and again, part of that's because we're capturing what we weren't capturing before. We don't really know that, and again, it goes back to correlating that with the information that Marty was reporting, that it's really because we've got more people working in the area of technology is because we're capturing some things that we weren't capturing before. Overall, you know, our spend and the things that we collect information on has increased steadily over the last 4 years, 15 million, and 18 million increase in the last year. Our EdTech money, the KETS money, has slightly decreased this last year as far as what we spent, but other funds has increased to make that difference. So again, back to the method to the madness, I really want to make sure districts are looking at this information because you know, we have to be able to speak to, because, you know, we'll get asked quite often about, well, do we have enough money to do this, and how is the money being spent? And obviously, we have a state funding program, we have a federal funding program in E-rate that we have to be able to speak to and report on. So us correlating that information with the digital readiness information that Marty was speaking to, and again with our vendor contract information, those are pieces of the puzzle that we put together, and we need districts looking at that information as well. I know I was speaking to Shane, right? I make sure I get the name wrong. Earlier about just some things that he's kind of observed, because I was just pointing some things out that I was looking at with Hart County and some different fluctuation in how their dollars have been over the last couple of years. And he was able to speak to, yeah, you know, why those things are happening. And I think it's important for districts to be aware of that. On top of that, especially as we, you know, drive conversations to increase funding and you know, continue funding and increase funding. So we'll be speaking to that more in the future, more specifics around the technology activity report data, which is the dollars associated to the kind of conversation Marty was having, and be sharing that and making that available as well. I do want to mention earlier, I couldn't find my note, but Powerhouse Recycling is the name of the company that received the contract for the e-scrap. And I had a note that they will, you know, have the ability to pick up at districts, and so we'll be providing more information about that so the districts are aware.
And our team back in Frankfurt has added some additional details in the box. We had some questions on that specific contract, which again goes to surplusing devices. And just a point of clarity, with Powerhouse Recycling, districts still get a reimbursed certain amount per pound. And so that's where, you know, that Powerhouse would cut a district a check for.
Okay, so I said that wrong. Yeah.
For most components. Now, there still is, you know, a cost for districts if you're recycling old CRT monitors and things like that. So many technologies that would be surplus, you still would get a reimbursement from.
So it depends on what it is. Yeah.
So for these two that we spent some time on, the technology activity report and the digital readiness, and there's another component of that, there's a couple reasons we do that, and we want to be very accurate. One is, for example, we take a lot of data, we provide it to legislators to make decisions. We always like to collect this before every legislative session and have it fairly well finalized because we get a lot of questions during the session as they're making big decisions. Now, this is not legislation coming up when we talk about money, but the next one is, but they're always interested in this type of information. And once again, Kentucky does this better than the other 49 states. We can give the level of detail that my peers can't. I'm very thankful to that, but we want to be accurate. And so you've seen, I know, Bruce, with your region, and you, how many districts do you have? 30 districts are working on the quality assurance to making sure it's the highest level of quality, and did we code these right? So as Mike says, is really taking a look at the people side of this. Has that not been coded correctly in the past, and did we see a bump? And really making sure we have that accurate number. And so as reporting, just as you asked in some of the questions, we can respond to that, and we want to be able to respond. And to be honest with you, with the amount of money that we spend toward education technology, we should be able to respond to that, and the sophistication of the system. And so our expectation, that's why the data quality one was concerning to us. We have to have people in district that are really, that's very important to them, a certain key data elements. They're inspecting it for accuracy to making sure it looks right or wrong. And I know this go around, we're saying, does that look right? Just not that they put something in, does that look right? And so that's why you're seeing the questioning like you've never seen it before, is really trying to make sure these things are as accurate as they can be.
And we want to make sure that we're maximizing all the opportunities that we have. I mean, the E-rate program, the federal E-rate program is a great example that we speak to regularly, obviously, but we want to make sure we're maximizing that program. Those are huge dollars that are available to the state of Kentucky. They're available to all states. And we've really done a good job throughout the history of that program in maximizing those dollars. And so, you know, we look at all these things collectively, and that is a big part of what we look at. And we will reach out to a district if we feel like there's opportunity there that's not being utilized, not being taken advantage of, because again, those are huge dollars. I mean, multiple millions of dollars that come into the state each year.
The other part that we look at, and you saw that, the School Facility Construction Commission. So that presentation I did here 6 weeks ago was based upon the data we received. Every year I present to our Kentucky Board of Education by law. They must take a look at the technology need and unmet need. And so the data that we base that presentation on is based upon this. And so it plays many important roles for us. So that's why we wanted important and wanted to spend some time today. I know we're going through the Bright Bites and getting that, the Speak Up, and getting that. So that'll be part of our digital readiness report in the January timeframe, but we want to spend some time giving you some preliminary results of this. Next month, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, we'll be spending time with the OEA report. They'll be spending time on 3 areas, and there's some great charts within that report you can take a look at. We'll be focusing on the ones on pages 41, 42, and 44, and they talk about which districts have one-to-one, which districts don't, and which districts are close to that, which I think is an interesting discussion as we move toward that. Also, we want to talk about this shift from paper instructional material to digital. We've definitely seen that shift, and they're going to talk about that during it. And also, something from a cybersecurity perspective, approximately 4 and 5 districts said they do not share student data generated by digital instructional materials with anyone outside agency. That's great. Got to work out the other 1 of 5 to make sure they're really thinking that through, but that's good progress. And so those are the areas they'll be talking about next month. We'll be in Estill County next month, and so they'll be joining us from Skype, and I know they had an EARS committee meeting today. So let's talk about, we're going to do the follow-up, talk about a CIO Summit follow-up. This is the last item. This is where we took district feedback from the summit we had in March and addressing those and how we're going to address those. And this is the last area of the ones that we talked about. So Marty, professional development, education, technology.
Absolutely. So as our district EdTech leaders know, we really take care of and really pay a close attention on what the feedback that we're getting from our EdTech leaders, and then act on that. We don't just listen to it, we act on it. And so it's a lot of fun for us to have a CIO Summit. We just started work with our KISTE leadership, Kentucky Society for Technology and Education leadership, to plan this upcoming year's summit at the KISTE spring event. So we're really excited about that. It's going to be a lot of fun again this year. We hope to get some really good questions and get some conversation going. Last year we talked about professional development in terms of instructional and learning technologies, and so really I think we've stolen stole some of the thunder today because we've integrated it into this conversation, which has been fantastic. But just to kick us off, we believe that ESEA Title 4A kind of stole some of our playbook, and we think that they have it right. So focusing on building capacity, sustainability, and leveling up. We have that same model here in Kentucky with our field staff all across the state, where we invest in the learning along with the technology, as we've mentioned several times today. We think that it needs to be job embedded, data driven, as always, right? And classroom focused. I know, Debbie, we talked earlier about your ESEA and Title 4A funding from last year, and you focused on STEM. And could you care to share just a bit about that?
Well, we had a need for
Yeah.
that. We had done a survey district-wide,
Yeah.
and our teachers expressed a need for that. So we took those survey results and implemented it into our Title IV funding. And that's also where the Google certifications 1 and 2 came from. And we have teachers very excited about this, and we have students very excited about it too. Is that what you needed?
That's exactly, that really ties in the conversation that we had at the summit.
Yes.
And so, you had a need, you understood that need, and then you put money towards it that came with Title 4A. And with additional money, you've wrapped in Google certification and some other things that fit into your design, which is perfect. So we broke it down at the summit last year on 3 big things. Number 1 was most crucial needs. So just a quick capture of what we heard. And again, some of this is repetitive from what we've talked about today already, which is perfect. That helps us know that our EdTech leaders are aligned all the way across the state. So training on specific curriculum and digital tools that has already been purchased and not being used. So there's a most crucial need is to focus on the stuff that we already have, as opposed to continuing to buy more and not implementing or working towards adoption. Level up to application and integration training beyond just how to use the tool. That's something that you all are focused on and you've mentioned. Building capacity with building leaders. So that's something that we've focused on at KDE, to focus on our principals and our building leaders, that we have got to put more energy into our principals in terms of digital skills and leveling up there. We heard at the summit, full-time digital learning coaches. We've got to get to, whether we call them technology resource teachers, technology integration specialists, CITs, a lot of different names, but and titles, but digital learning coaches at a leadership level, skilling up our instructional coaches, something you're focused on as well. Building more capacity with our library leaders. David mentioned that. New for us is that now with our team, we are taking statewide care of our library leaders to pull in that work at a state level. And so we have a lot of, I think, momentum there that we're going to be working statewide on. That fits in perfect, especially when we have library leaders who have flex schedules and things like that. So adding a digital component to our principal walkthroughs, we heard that pretty clearly. What should it look like, right? That's an important thing for us. Close gap between curriculum and instruction needs and technology needs. We heard at the summit, university teacher prep programs, right? We just talked about that. And helping level up during the undergrad and graduate programs. We need, as a crucial need, that was loud and clear, help with learning management systems. You mentioned Google Classroom. Well, learning how to use that tool, as a learning management system, and then working that into the application process. Stop buying stuff that doesn't work well. We talked about that already. That's a crucial need, or it's too hard to adopt or implement. Classroom management came up quite a bit at our CO summit. That our EdTech leaders were very clear that classroom management with more technologies is something that we have to focus on, and that's something that we need to help focus on as well. That's a gap. Understand the plan for teacher turnover. What does it look like when teachers that have gone through a professional learning experience, a sustained leave, and we fill in with new folks? How do we catch them up? How do we onboard? That's a huge identification and gap area for us probably. Teachers need more time to play and learn. That we heard that loud and clear as well. Item number 2 that we hit at the summit was who can best address these needs. We were thankful that we heard loud and clear that our digital learning coach team at KDE and our office have been invited to over 100 school districts. Our digital learning coach team has been invited into over 100 school districts so far, and we heard loud and clear that we need to keep doing that. So that's good. We think about having episodes or chapters of a great book where we focus on a phase at a time, whether that's with our teacher leaders, our school building leaders, and then working more towards adoption. We also heard that who best can address the needs. Co-ops, our cooperatives, our education cooperatives come into play. Our university partners like UK, Next Gen Leadership Academy, Kate, in Western Kentucky, at Murray State. College of Eds, we mentioned. Asynchronous through video playlist, that came up and was discussed. Badging, micro-credentialing is a hot topic for us to try to identify teacher skills and level up and progress towards there. The third area, I know I'm rushing, kind of going through a little bit quickly, but we asked what's been the best technology or digitally related professional development in the past decade that our folks have experienced, our EdTech leaders across the state. KISTI came up, ISTE, our KY Go Digital work, that's been a lot of fun to help grow that and to see that grow. COSIN, FETC, and then a lot of work with Amplified and Google and CDW that have partnered throughout. Microsoft came up, Apple came up in that conversation. The Fire Summit, that KVEC with their ARI work came up quite a bit.
KVEC's our Eastern Kentucky, Kentucky Valley Educational Cooperative in far Eastern Kentucky. And
then I kind of captured that with any event where we bring people together to co-design. That was a common thread. Our OET Training Academy is something that we are addressing right now, that we're working on right now to help level up and build skills for our EdTech leaders.
In our office, so the Office of Education Technology, OET, yeah.
Yep. And so those are just some big picture. And then we did have two questions through Go Soapbox
let's see the two questions,
that address that.
Yeah.
And so we asked directly today.
Okay, he's got command of it, okay.
We asked directly today, who are you leveraging to lead your digital professional development and professional development experiences? We had some options out there. Now, out of 50 folks who are watching live today,
well, 50 that responded. We got a lot more watching, but
that's
50
right.
that responded.
A gazillion, right?
Good.
Yeah, we have Kabillion watching.
So it looks like, David, the majority of folks who responded today have a good mix of, outside leaders with partners and cooperatives, district level leaders. And then question number 2 that we asked is, have you found value in detailing your digitally charged professional learning, professional development in your technology plan? And so that's this connection which last month we talked about and really work towards our new tech plan opportunities as we move forward. And I think this is pretty telling. Spending time detailing professional development, professional learning experiences in your technology plan, 23, so 48% are still not sure, still not seeing the fruits of that labor yet. So that's an area that I think we can continue to work on.
The one thing I'd mention in this, you can take it off the slide, that I've seen over my 26 years, and it goes back to one of your points here, Marty, about the continuous training. There's a lot of enthusiasm when someone has a brand new technology and they make sure all the teachers are trained. But as they come and go, those teachers are not trained. And so that device or whatever it is, and the one example I use, and I know I get, is the smart board type of technology. The technology is fantastic, but the problem is teachers come and go. No one's training them how to use that in their instruction, therefore it's not used, and therefore it's not a maximized investment. So it's really important just not to get excited about the initial deployment, but just like your children, I have 4 of them, it's just not the birth of them, you got them, I thought it was 18, but now it's longer, as it turns out. The care and feeding is a whole lot longer, so remember the care and feeding of these is quite some time. So thank you, Marty. I know we went through that very in a concise manner, but and I appreciate those that you still have time for all these Go Soapbox questions to give a response to them. I did want to circle back to some of the other topics that we have. December 14th, and we collect this every year. My cue, we collect this every year, is we want feedback from you, and honest feedback done in a constructive way. What kind of things in education technology did we do well in 2018? That's the first thing. We want 3 to 5 things from every district. The next one is, what are 3 to 5 things we didn't do well, or we should have gotten to that we didn't? Once again, done constructively. And the third area, what should be our top goals for 2019, top 3 to 5? And we're looking for those at every district. Same quality assurance measure that we're collecting it. We use those for very big things throughout the school year, along with legislators. The feedback we get is a variety of long things, so that's important for us to see and improve. I always consider that's an area of improvement, so if there's an area we can get better at, we want to know. And I think that's the only way you get better, but also identify the things we've done well in the direction you want us to go. School report card. The annual school report card. It's our intention at this time to do a soft launch of that. That means you're approving and validating the data by hopefully tomorrow. We'll know a little bit more about that later in the day with the official release on Monday. I do know we had 2 questions related to the school report card. Questions 3 and 4, I believe, if you can bring those up.
David, question number 3, are you involved in school report card data validation out of the 51 responses?
Yeah, so these are you being the EdTech leader of the district, are you? So this helps you understand where you're at with some of your peers across the state, okay? I hope we'd like to see that 100%, but up there pretty well. Next one, question 4. So this is where we're wanting to see how well the stuff the school said they had really compares to what you said the district you had. And so you really need to do that comparison.
And this is a question that we're asking this year. Moving forward, we will collapse a couple of our data collection measures, so we will not ask in digital readiness the things that are being asked in school report card. We'll use that same information and kind of roll it up, if you will. As obviously our digital readiness work is a district look as opposed to individual schools. And so we'll start to collapse that to make sure that we're not double asking. I know there's some strategies that districts are using right now where maybe someone at the district level puts in the individual school. Is that a strategy that you've employed? Puts in the school technology information? Yep.
The next topic, and Phil, I'll hit on Muse here just a second, is the Kentucky Department of Education went through a reorganization. I want to let you know from the Office of Education Technology, that's our office. It didn't really impact our office, the things that we do and the organizational structure and the name, so those all remain the same. However, there have been some offices that changed. Probably the Office of Teaching and Learning is the biggest change if you take a look at this, and also the Education Professional Standards Board now becoming part of the Department of Education. And with that change, we do have 5 positions, technical positions, that were part of the Professional Standards Board that will now be part of the Office of Education Technology. So we'll be much more heavily involved with everything to do with that area, and we're trying to come up to speed on it the best we can. So let's circle back to Munis. That's our financial management system that we use in all 173 districts. We did put out a note last week, and this goes on with our cybersecurity, is these phishing attempts. And we've had an 80% increase of those across the state and the nation, of those pretending to be somebody or pretending to represent something that they're not really, and they're trying to take advantage of people's good nature and trusting nature. As I always say, don't become so jaded like me, but do have somewhat of a suspicious side of folks trying to send something, especially if they're asking for your username and password. No one is ever in a legitimate spot going to ask you for your username and password for you to say that, email it to them, because they're not trying to help you, I guarantee you that. And we had an attempt on the Munis side that someone was pretending to be us at the state level and wanting to provide information back up, and it really wasn't to us, it was to someone else. They were pretending to be us. They didn't get into our system at all, they were just pretending. To my knowledge, no district fell for that. And the other things are in the past, but that's definitely going to see an increase on that. They're much more sophisticated of what they're putting in place. The other thing, Munis related, and these are discussions I had with all the financial leaders, the school financial leaders last week. about this topic, and one of those ones, and Phil Coleman, is our disaster recovery test. As most folks know, Kentucky K-12 is the national leader in cloud-based computing. Every major service we have is in the cloud. There's no other K-12 in the United States close to us. There's no other state agency, whether it be here in Kentucky or other states, that's close to our movement to cloud-based computing. And one of the big parts of, besides the tremendous cost savings and the efficiencies that have been gained by that move, there's also the disaster recovery aspect before. And we wanted to test it. You don't want to test disaster recovery once you're going through the disaster. So we did a test. What was it?
It was on November the 9th.
Yeah.
We basically simulated, well, when I say we, this was Tower, and they basically simulated the breaking of the network. So just pretend a hurricane wiped out their location in Maine, or a tsunami or whatever, earthquake. Simulated breaking that network connection, and we failed every school district in Kentucky over to the Dallas, Texas disaster recovery site. And then the school districts, the finance officers went in, they did some tests to make sure things were working and those kinds of things. That went on for 2 hours. Then we basically cut them back over to what we call production. And that was very, very successful. We had 133 school districts that completed the survey and said, you know, this is what we experienced. And we feel like there was a whole lot more school districts. The other 40 actually did it, but we had 133 that completed the survey.
I think we have one in this room.
We had one in this room that completed the survey.
So how'd it go? How'd it go from your all's perspective?
As far as I know, everything went fine. Crews would have been.
We would have known, right, if it wouldn't have been, right?
Oh, yeah.
Especially from our finance officers across the state. And that's a good sign. No one's like, sure, that tells me how well it went. Not perfect. We learned some things through this, right, Phil?
Yeah, there were 2 or 3 things that we learned. We always want to be able to pick up the things that, when you do that failover, when you simulate that break, you know, what is experience for the school district. So a lot of those things were kind of behind the scenes. Some of those things were visible. I think there were some menu items that didn't show up that we were able to make corrections on. And going forward, we'll just identify, you know, more and more things so that what you want to have happen is when you do the failover that it actually, you don't know anything happens at all. So.
Now, we also talked about with finance officers this concept of addressing stale accounts. You're going to go right back over to Phil here in just a second. So is the reason those are so important is hackers go after these accounts of folks that have not left the district. They can go undetected for long periods of time. So that's why it is so important to stay on top of, as you have people coming and going from the district, is removing their credentials, just not Munis, but by the way, every digital system. And I would say if there's one thing we can do a whole lot better on in Kentucky K-12 and K-12 in general is that. I do think all K-12 suffers with that. And it's regardless of the hiring mechanism of the district. People, I know over the years for me, if they come in this way and they're not brought in through the normal personnel system, say, I promise I'll tell you when I leave. Never has happened. They never tell you when they leave. I mean, they want the access or credentials, and so those kind of can go on for a long period of time. So I know on the Munis side, part of the I talked to the finance officers and how well we doing in that arena and some others with stale accounts.
Well, we have some stale accounts on the Munis side, and we're going to be addressing those with the finance officers.
Robin Kinney, who's our chief financial officer, is sending something out, but also through the CIOs, we've sent something.
Yeah, it'll probably come from Steve Lyles in our office for finance office. But we're working on that. We're identifying what those are, and we can talk to you guys about what we see on your all side as far as, you know, kinds of stale accounts. But using the Munis application for authentication of Active Directory accounts and other accounts is a really good way to do that, because if you think about every adult in the school district, they all get paid through the Munis system. And so that's a really good way to bring people on, but it's also a really good way to separate people from the school district, because once they're out, you know, after payroll, they shouldn't really be in the Munis system anyway. So that's a really good way to do that. And we're looking at ways for the student would be for Infinite Campus to
do that.
So, I'll make sure I understand, this is a pretty big thing for us, is the stale accounts is a cybersecurity threat for us. In the Active Directory, we talked about our concern about having so many stale Active Directory accounts, and these are people who have come and gone, and I know there's these 1%, everyone brings up these 1% things. I know you don't deal with that, legislators, but I don't ignore them. We put them to the side, but don't let that 1% drive the 99%. So there's these strange situations where you got to keep someone with the account X number of days. But when you have someone that's not logged into a year, do they really need an account? Maybe not logged into 4 months. Do they really need an account? And there may be these let's say the 1% of 1% things that happen that you do that, but that's not your normal practice. And because of the vulnerability you have cybersecurity-wise, you can't do that. So we do have, Kentucky is unique in the United States. We have one financial management system and one school information system, and one high-speed network, only state to do that. So let's take advantage of that and create something to where we'd really address these stale accounts. So on the Munis side, given that all the adults, because they're paid that way, it should be pretty accurate, right? And so that would start feeding the Active Directory system, and obviously from the student side, that's going to be very accurate because of the average daily attendance aspect of it. So let's start using that to populate Active Directory. So we have some districts that have,
districts that do that already.
and it's few, but we got to grow that. Is that correct? Would you say that? Yeah. So you don't be seeing initiative. I think that's one of the plus values that we as Department of Education can do for school districts is coordinate that. And not every district has a superstar programmer that some of these other districts have. So how do we help the districts have a tool that does something similar where they don't have these superstar programmers available to them to build it and maintain it?
Right, well, we're going to work with both Tyler, and we're going to work with Infinite Campus, and we're going to work with the school districts that have already done this successfully and try to come up with a plan for all school districts. So, an easy way to do that, to do that integration.
And is there anything, I know we're talking about the cleanup, with the stale accounts with Active Directory. I guess is there anything else you want to say about it that we've not said already?
We see a reduction in that, in the numbers of stale accounts, but we still don't see that down to where we would want to see it.
And that's something we're watching pretty closely.
We watch that very, very closely. We're actually running the reports today for every school district. We'll give those to the KITS engineer, and they will share those with each individual school district on how well they're doing.
I love that. That's part of our continued partnership and collaboration, trying to help each other out. Yeah. David, we actually got a Go Soapbox question that asks, why hasn't KDE made a system for making accounts from Munis their standard to Active?
We're going to be listening and helping respond to that. Thank you. Perfect.
Infinite Campus.
And it wasn't our staff that wrote that in, by the way. That was
well, I also have a couple of Go Soapbox questions to do with the Munis.
Yeah, okay, that's right. Let's ask about the Munis part of it, yeah. Were those questions 5 and 6?
Yep. Involved in recent.
And so that's not totally surprising because we'd like to see more EdTech leaders involved with that. Were you involved with it? Okay. I'd like to see more of you involved with that in some kind of way to be aware of it. Chief financial officers are on top of this, and we recognize that. But just be awareness of it and be involved with it. So let's see the next one. Question 6.
There was some feedback on this question and liking a couple more options as opposed to just a yes or no on it. And I'm looking at Bruce Lindsay right now, who I know there are several districts in your region that are already implementing this with success. And it's just it's back to ease of use and adoption and helping get the technology out of the way, especially since we have these major statewide systems.
Well, I think this is going to be a topic that we're going to be talking a whole lot more about in the future.
Yeah.
So.
And once again, the leverage, there's a need for it. We're the best positioned state in the United States to do this. There is a demand for it, obviously, with the tremendous interest and the real threat in cybersecurity and safety. This is the right thing to do, and you're going to see us moving down this direction.
I love it for security purposes, but also ease of use and adoption. I mean, it's kind of that dual purpose conversation.
Phil, it's also a good time. We talked about last webcast about Gov delivery. This was our test of from the KD level. We're sending out a message to, our chief communications officer sends something out, and how many people are opening it and looking at it to get a feedback from that. We did it. We talked about it, now we tested it, now we did it. So let's talk about that.
The test actually went very, very well. Our commissioner sent out a note to all adults in K through 12 in Kentucky. And the feedback was, looks like we had way more than 40% of people that actually, or of adults that actually opened the email.
Within a short period of time. I think that's the other key.
Within a couple of days. And I don't know, the number's probably increased since then, but that's really above the national average for those kinds of mass mailings. It's probably 3 or 4 times as much. So that's a really good testimony of how, how well that the adults in K through 12, I'm talking about teachers, administrators, and IT workers and everything got that email. So everybody's really interested in what's going on in K through 12. So good test. So we'll continue to improve that service.
Last topic, and I'll let you look, Mark, if there's any kind of questions we got to respond to, we are the national leader in our Student Technology Leadership Program. Very proud of that. We now have 60,000 students that are part of that here in Kentucky, and the quality and depth of that is tremendous, and very, very proud of what we've done in that area. We had a great kickoff, which we always do at Murray State University. They are the standard for a university taking ownership of that event and really making a good experience for all the K-12 students. We're bringing them 5-star recruits to their campus, by the way. We always remind them there's nothing else that brings 5-star recruits like this. Take advantage of that. Promote your university. Have these students start thinking this is a possible option for me in the future. Studies show anytime a student K through 12 is on a university campus, it breaks that barrier, and they think maybe this could be me. Not that everyone has to choose that path, but at least they can. It's part of their consideration. So Murray State, and this is the standard for all the other public universities of Kentucky, is Murray State. And I always say that public is very proud of them. Their president of the university is usually always involved. Their dean of their colleges come and promote it. They really do a 5-star job of making it feel like we're just not there renting space, but they're the owner of the event, and they're promoting it throughout their campus and make our students feel very special. We were at NKU, Northern Kentucky University, yesterday. We had Morehead State. That was a fun one, too, at the University of Louisville. So we're halfway through it. I know at the University of Louisville one, we had a snow day. So we had more folks from Jefferson County we've ever had, but the other schools participating were mainly out. So what are we going to do for that?
We are in the early planning phase of scheduling an additional and then trying to also encourage our current plans of a virtual regional option day. Right. So we'll be excited about that, and Jeff Sobolski, our statewide champion for STOP, will be getting that information out.
So we encourage you all we have a state championship at Rupp Arena every year. It's a happening event.
Outstanding.
It's a fun event, and we invite you two to come see that. I think you'd be very impressed about what the students across the state are doing. And we are trying to make an initiative to try to get more of our state legislators to attend that, because it's a very proud moment for us. I know always trying to deal with the legislative session during that time and trying to get away, so we're trying to time it for that. So you definitely do have a personal invite from me to attend that. Hope to see you there. Any other top things we need to address?
Yeah, actually, the conversation we just had about accounts and stale accounts has generated many questions and concerns. I think just a couple to point out. This is concept, not execution point.
That's right.
For this conversation.
Right.
And we definitely will be working with our district leaders who have already implemented and adopted. Yeah. Just to point out, we do fully understand all of the implications, and we do fully understand the scenarios that may be out of band or a little bit different, one-off scenarios. Yeah. So, but that's certainly, great questions coming in there that'll help drive it.
So I would say this, much like we've done in the past, I can foresee this being one of our summit topics.
Absolutely.
Much like we've done in the past. This is not, you're great. We're in concept phase versus full execution. And so we'll have a chance for all 173 district EdTech leaders to give us feedback during the summit about our future direction in that area. But that's a topic. Yeah.
And I think we're talking about differentiated approaches, right? So for our districts who are well down this path, figure out what we can do to help a little bit more. Yeah. Right? And then for
none at all.
Or none at all, maybe.
Yeah. Maybe they got it down. Yeah. And
then for districts that have not started to implement some of these practices, and we know that these are full process changes in districts, and that's a long, it's a big ask and a big piece for us to move forward. So.
Well, thanks for being an outstanding host. I've enjoyed being here twice now within 2 months. But what a great team you assembled. This was a lot of fun to be interacting with you all. I hope it was a good experience for you all as well.
Great experience. Yeah. Thank you for coming once again. Also, Representative Rowland, Senator Meredith, you're always welcome in the district. district, and we always appreciate your support and what you've done for Hart County.
Thank you for having me.
I do want to throw one thing out. Be careful driving tonight. It's going to be a dark night tonight.
Well, speaking of dark and black nights, I just want you to make sure you're aware that the Army Black Knights, my colleagues,
Really?
they are in the top 25. Just happened to mention that, so, so I'm glad we got that worked that in for Jody Rose.
Are they 9 and 2?
They're 9 and 2.
9 and 2.
Yeah.
Okay.
Got one more game against Navy here on December 8th, so hopefully they'll be 10 and 2. But thank you, that was perfect. Glad you worked that in. Next month we'll be at Estill County, December 18th. Hope to see you there. Take care.